Keir Starmer's declaration that the UK is ready and willing to send troops to Ukraine as part of a European-led peacekeeping force is a striking shift in rhetoric. For a Prime Minister who's largely been cautious about foreign policy, this commitment marks the first time he's explicitly indicated a willingness to put British boots on the ground. But you have to ask, is this a genuine strategic move, or is it merely a grandstanding gesture in the light of Lord Dannett's sobering assessment yesterday of the UK's military capabilities? Starmer's argument is straightforward. Ensuring Ukraine's security is essential, he says, for European stability and a deterrent against further Russian aggression. And he invokes historical lessons, warning against a hasty or unstable peace like the peace in Afghanistan, where US-led negotiations sidelined the Afghan government and ultimately led to the Taliban's return. And I think that Afghan story is a pertinent one because, of course, the Afghan retreat was negotiated by Trump, carried out by Biden. So both presidents are at fault, and of course it's Trump who is pushing for speed now. Starmer's statements also serves a dual purpose, signalling to Washington that the UK is serious about defence, while pressuring European partners meeting in France today, particularly Germany, to increase their commitments. The grand vision, however, clashes with the stark assessment provided by General Lord Richard Dannett, the former head of the British Army. He has stated unequivocally that the UK military is so run down that it couldn't realistically lead or contribute substantially to any peacekeeping mission in Ukraine, and the numbers are damning. Dannett estimates that an effective peacekeeping force would require at least 100,000 troops, with the UK expected to contribute a significant share. However, he argues that Britain doesn't have the resources to sustain such a deployment, let alone lead it. This raises an uncomfortable question. How can Starmer offer troops that the military may not have the capacity to provide? Starmer's announcement comes in the middle of growing unease in Europe over the United States' shifting stance on Ukraine. Donald Trump has made it clear that he doesn't intend to send US troops and has floated the idea of negotiating a peace deal that excludes Ukraine from NATO membership. Meanwhile, European leaders, led by the French President Emmanuel Macron, are scrambling to craft a collective security guarantee for Ukraine, and the UK's offer to send troops, therefore, may be as much about securing a seat at the table in these high-stakes negotiations as it is about practical military contributions afterwards. There remains a great deal of ambiguity about what a European-led peacekeeping force would look like. Some proposals suggest that troops would be stationed behind Ukrainian lines rather than front. Others estimate that the mission could require tens of thousands of personnel, a daunting prospect given the limitations of European militaries. And the lack of clarity on these details makes Starmer's pledge seem more aspirational than actionable. At the same time, Zelensky arrives in Dubai, but whether or not he's going to be invited to participate in any way in the Saudi talks is another matter. He is at least vaguely in the region. One cannot ignore the political dimension of Starmer's statement. By making such a bold declaration ahead of a major European summit, which is described as not a summit, he positions UK as a leading voice on Ukraine, seeking to fill the perceived vacuum left by the US ambivalence. Domestically, it also serves to reinforce his credentials as a statesman willing to make tough calls on security and defence. However, without a clear plan for increasing Britain's military capabilities, even though recruitment, budgetary increases or logistical support might be promised, they aren't there at the moment, and this risks becoming an exercise in gesture politics. If the UK lacks the ability to provide meaningful troop contributions, Starmer's words ring hollow, much like the European Union's repeated pledges of military aid that failed to materialise in significant enough quantities. Keir Starmer's offer to help Ukraine by sending British troops is a bold statement of intent, reflecting a broader European effort to take greater responsibility for regional security. But this commitment must be measured against the UK's actual military capabilities, and Lord Dannett's warnings cannot be ignored. Without significant reinvestment in the armed forces, Britain's ability to meaningfully contribute to a peacekeeping mission is doubtful. Unless the government backs its rhetoric with action, Starmer's pledge will be remembered as yet another instance of grandstanding rather than genuine strategic leadership.